lot of things happened over the weekend. And Amnesty International stuck out like a sore thumb, you know, speaking up when everyone else was wondering what was going on. And just so they can break down a few of these issues with us, we have in the studio the country director of Amnesty International, Mr. Issa Sanusi. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
Thank you, Kela. Thank you for having me.
It's been a long time since I saw you.
Yeah, it's a long time.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very good.
All right, so let's talk about one of the things we heard Amnesty International talk about during this weekend. And it has to do with this core member.
Yes.
Who went to the store.
Yes.
And was frustrated. I think she had an experience that many of us have had, especially at that time in our lives, you know, when you're suddenly by yourself.
Exactly.
And then the cost of things suddenly become very real to you. And it's been the same story over the years. Although some may say that core members today may be having it a little harder because the stipend cannot in any way, even if they implement the new stipend for them, it wouldn't be able to meet up with the needs. But then again, there's the conversation around the fact that core members are supposed to live very demure lifestyles. You're supposed to, you know, cut your coat according to your cloth. You can't live extravagantly, maybe not extravagantly, but the way you're used to. So it's a change, an experience that you've probably never had before. But the issue really was when we started hearing her talk about, you know, the frustrations, and they using some words while she was describing President Bola Tinubu. Of course, people took issue with that, and of course, we heard that recorded phone call.
Yes. Where
that lady was saying, take that down, take that down. So the conversation around expressing yourself and what rules for the NYSC may have been broken here. That's where Amnesty International comes in. So break that down for us. Well,
as a human rights organization, we always believe that people have the right to express themselves. And freedom of expression is a fundamental human right. So any law, there is no law that can supersede fundamental human rights.
Not even the laws of the NYSC?
There is no any law whatsoever that can deprive you. You can never find yourself in a situation whereby someone will say, well, you are no longer entitled to right to life. You are no longer entitled to the right to freedom of thought, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. There is nothing. And if you look at, let us now focus on the circumstance of this lady. She was lamenting about what everyone knows is a reality. And what we expected, or what every reasonable person will expect from anybody, is to listen to her and ask her and give her a support. But unfortunately, she was threatened. And this exactly brings back the way Nigerians are treated by the authorities all the time. If you remember last year, some women came out in Mina, Niger State in February. They protested over the high cost of food, high cost of living, and they were arrested. They were humiliated. And 2 weeks later, a group of women as well staged a similar protest in Kano. They were also arrested. So this trend should not be happening in a free society, in a democratic country. I think the people in charge of Nigeria should change their way of looking at things, and they should start to respect the people. They should start to, in fact, I always have the feeling that I don't think they know what people are going through at all.
So an account came up on X, and what he did was he said, look, we understand that you are frustrated, a lot of Nigerians are, but you did break a few rules here. And they showed that soft copy of the rules of the NYSC. And it's a rule book that we've all had. It's still old, though, because it's still the old national anthem that is on it. But they pointed out the fact there were some things. You're not supposed to speak to the press as a core member. You're not supposed to make any policy statements to the press. You're not supposed to criticize people in authority. We don't know if that means people in the NYSC camp or people in government. We're not sure what that means, really. You know, and no partisan activities. These are some of the things that are written inside the NYSC rules. I know that Amnesty International basically looks out for the rights of the person, the right to expression. However, the argument that you should have understood what the rules of the organization that you are in states, and contravening those rules will come with consequences. You know, could you help us to balance that out?
Well, if you look at those rules, we have all done NYSC. And we all know that if you sign off as a staff of channels television, you have code of conduct as well. But there is nothing whatsoever that can deprive you of your right as a human being.
So is it that the rules of the NYC, in your view, are those rules wrong? Because, the rules of the NYC, based on what you're saying, they contravene what the Constitution says about the right to express yourself.
And whatever contravenes the Constitution is null and void. We have to dismiss it. And here we are talking about the situation of people, reality. And when you are talking about reality, I don't think it makes any sense whatsoever to be talking about those rules. Because we are talking about people suffering, we are talking about hunger, we are talking about dealing with escalating inflation every day. So when this lady came out and did that video, the right thing should have been to call her, listen to her, give her the right support. This kind of thing can push somebody to harm himself as well, because she is like at the dead end, at a standstill. She had been stretched to the last point. And I don't think that threatening her or bringing whatever bylaw or whatever. Bylaw is different, life is different. We are talking about reality. And I believe that all those laws of NYSC should never matter where human life is at stake, because no one knows exactly. You know, that lady was brave enough to even come on social media and express herself. And she should be even, I think she should be commended for doing that. And the next reasonable thing is to listen to her, give her the right kind of support. But threatening her will aggravate her situation. And it is already inciting Nigerian youths and making them to question the contract between them and their leaders. Government. Yes.
Because you see, that's the conversation. You know, the outrage of it is one thing, but actions going forward will be what will ensure change in our country. Now, if the rules of Channels TV, because there's a code of conduct here, if the code of conduct of Channels TV contravenes the Constitution, what kind of conversation can we have about that? Should we now focus on changing the rules, like in this case, the NYSC, changing some of those rules? Like I said, they're old. I saw that at the top of the soft copy is still the old national anthem that's there. You know, should the conversation now move towards looking at these rules governing core members and changing them and making them more humane and more in tune with the rights in the Constitution? Exactly. And how can we get that done?
Exactly. I believe that, you know, these bylaws have to be reviewed, and the whole NYSC had to be overhauled. When I was doing NYSC myself, I experienced this kind of abuse myself. And I know that, you know, these days you even see corpers being treated as if they are not human beings. And this should not happen. And that is why our society is very violent, because people are treated roughly. And when they come out into the society, the only thing they understand is haggling, violence, you know, shouting at each other without any element of kindness. And we have to change things, because these young people just graduated from university. The next important thing they are supposed to receive is kindness.
The element of kindness. That's such an important thing to say.
Exactly.
The element of kindness in everything that
Exactly. And you know what we are going through. Like recently, I was having a conversation with two recent graduates who are doing their NYSC. And I was asking them, what are you planning to do? And they were telling me that they are doing their NYSC. They are hoping for maybe to get a job, but they are also doing other things. They are acquiring skills. They are doing what we call hustling in Nigeria. So I believe that Nigerian youth should be respected. I think the way this lady was treated shows the kind of disdain with which Nigerian youths have been treated. And I think enough is enough, and the authorities have to stop this kind of behavior.
Speaking of the civic space, many people have stayed talking about the shrinking of Nigeria's civic space. And I'm going to ask you this question before I bring in Ayo, my colleague from Lagos. This letter that was sent by the National Assembly, we saw, it was CISLAC that actually released the one that we saw. And it had to do with, you know, the NGOs in Nigeria and regulation of NGOs. They gave them a list of things that they needed them to submit, among them being every money that you have received since 2015.
Yes.
And what the money was used for. What is your modus operandi? Who are your board members? And things like that. Do you find this some kind of way of muscling the civic space, or is this just the accountability that, you know, we've been asking for, considering the story that we heard about USAID?
Well, we have been monitoring the civic space for so long, and one thing that our politicians are forgetting all the time is the fact that, you know, democracy and their existence as politicians would never have happened without the civic space. The civic space created the situation or the environment in which democracy thrives, and that is why we have the National Assembly, we have elections, we have politicians. So what is happening is that there have been many attempts to gag the non-governmental organizations. No one is saying that they should not be held to account. And I believe that in Nigeria right now, one of the most difficult things to do is to run an NGO, because you will be submitting this document to this agency, this document to this agency. Now, most of these documents, the House of Representatives has been asking this organization to submit. They are things that every organization submits to the CAC every year in the name of annual filing. And that annual filing says what your financial statement is. It also says, it also provides CAC with your auditor's report, directors, trustees, your net assets, a lot of things. You have to do that every year, and there is a deadline, there is a penalty. So I think, you know, we are in a situation whereby, you know, NGOs are people in power are trying to make NGOs the fall guys. They are trying by hook or crook to make sure that they gag the civic space, because they tend to think that the civil society is a threat to them, while they don't know that. So
should they go and get those documents from CAC and not from
Definitely, definitely. And you remember that in 2020 we had CAMA, Companies and Allied Matters Act, which transformed the management and the scrutiny every NGO goes through. And that CAMA was aimed at scrutinizing and preventing every NGO from doing anything that is unlawful. And that law is in place.
It's still in place. All right, I'm going to bring in Ayo so he can ask you a few questions. Go ahead, Ayo.
Thank you, Kayla. You know, I'm looking at a document here now from the Nigerian Nigerian Journal of Social Studies, April 2021, analyzing Nigerian national value and what they are and who are their custodians. And I find that, you know, among these values, quite a number of things, actually. Quite a number of things are listed on that list, part of which, of course, includes patriotism, truthfulness, you know, respect for elders, and all those things. The first question that comes to me, looking at the previous conversation with Kayla, is whether or not you think we are significantly or adequately preparing our youths for the future that is certain. There's a song making the rounds now. It's a very old song by Dr. Victor Raye, a high-life musician in southwest Nigeria. You may know him as well. Singing about the tough times as far back as the 60s and saying that it's so tough out there. There's no money anywhere. Men are shouting, women are shouting, everyone is shouting there is no money, as far back as in the 60s. But hey, the man is perhaps even a nonagenarian now, and he's still very much alive and well. Old, yes, but... So question that I'm asking is, do you think, knowing that the life is going to play a card on the young, do you think we are significantly, adequately preparing them for the certainties, the realities that this young lady spoke about in the video?
Well, thank you, Ayo. I believe that we are not doing the right thing, and we are not on the right track when it comes to young people. Our population currently consists of largely of younger people, and our demography is largely young. So what is happening is that whenever you have a conversation with young people, all you hear about is hopelessness. They are losing hope. Those who can are leaving the country in droves, and those who could not are struggling to survive every day. And I believe that one of the important thing that we should be paying attention to is the condition and the state of mind of our younger generation. And we
we're
are
coming
not
there,
doing
Mr.
that.
Sanusi.
And
Just one
definitely,
second. My apologies.
yes.
We're coming there, but
Yes.
I'm talking about the various levels of preparation. They went through primary school, went through secondary school, and guess what? They heard the lamentations of their teachers about how the nation is. They listen to the lamentations of their own parents and how the country is and all. And then they go to the NYSC and perhaps also hear lamentations. Meanwhile, part of the preparation that they should go through in the NYSC is entrepreneurial development. I'm not sure how significantly you think that is also preparing them for the future that is certain. Life hasn't gotten easier since the 80s. Things have gotten incrementally more expensive by the day. So it's that preparation from the social levels, from the family levels, from the cultural levels that I'm talking about before we can get to the national level.
Well, I believe that we have to manage the expectation of the young people. But I don't think we can manage their expectation, because there is no way we can prepare them for the future without managing their expectations. But one thing I believe, or I think is the right thing to do, is to make sure that those who are running the country, or those who are in charge of government institutions or non-governmental institutions, should live by example. You can't be telling somebody that, there are no jobs in the country, and then all of a sudden you hear institutions of government employing people through the back door. You can't be telling people that there is no money in the country, and they see SUVs splashing through the streets every now and then, bought with public funds. Therefore, the issue is there is a huge disconnection, because the Gen Z generation are different. Their way of looking at things is different, while the older generation is looking at things also in a different way. There is a huge disconnect. And that disconnection is a big problem, and that is why we could not adequately prepare them for the future. We have to bridge that gap first of all. We have to create that communication. The leaders and the people, even elderly people in the society, they have to open up channels of communication with these younger people. We should not be dismissing their concerns. We should not be thinking that they are only fond of luxury. We should not be dismissing their concerns. We should not be dismissing their aspirations. I believe that it has to start from there.
Okay. Well, but when you say that the Gen Z, the Generation Z, is a different, generation, of course, you're absolutely right. You're probably also speaking from experience with your children as well. But then I don't think we can dismiss that difference of theirs as something that that creates the temerity to discountenance values. For instance, you've spoken quite a number of times about the fundamental human rights of everyone, including the Gen Z generation. But then, where do we place fundamental human rights as opposed to respect for institutions, as opposed to patriotism, as opposed to culture and values? At what point do we draw the line or blur the lines?
Well, let me start, Ayo, by saying that respect is earned. Respect is earned. There is no way somebody will sit down and expect to be respected either because of the number of years he spent on earth, or the number of degrees he has, or the number of positions he has in government. I think respect is earned, and I don't think that, anybody will say that the younger generation are without the values of respect. We have to do the things that will make them to respect us. There is no way we can expect respect from them without doing the right thing. Why are we not having electricity? How can I respect you when I know that electricity is not a magic? It can be provided, and you cannot. So why do you expect me to respect you at all? There are no roads, no schools, and people are struggling with health care. Why do you expect me to respect you?
I mean, Mr. Sanusi, listening to you talk all morning, I think it comes down to that contract, the social contract between the Nigerian people, young or old, with the government, and it's making me wonder, the fact that one person didn't keep his own side of the contract, does that mean that I shouldn't keep my side as well?
Well, we have to encourage compartmentality, and what I mean by that is that we have to make sure that everyone is doing the right thing, and that is very important. Leaders have their obligations, and we, the citizens, have our own obligations. But a situation whereby you are always hammering on the responsibilities and the duties of the people, while not saying the same thing on the other side, I think that is very unfair, and it will not work.
So in closing, when it comes to these requests made by the National Assembly for NGOs and the situation with our dear core member, what do you think should happen in both cases going forward? Well,
going forward for the National Assembly, I will expect them to have a rethink and withdraw that very long demand and unnecessary effort to put civil society organizations under pressure. They should withdraw it, respect themselves, and withdraw it. I believe that the civil society and the government have to work together to make our country better. If I have a bad intention, I will not be sitting here, I will not be setting up an NGO, I will go to the bush. Those who do not wish our country well are not living among us. They are in the bush killing people.
And for our core member?
And for our core member, I believe that her case should be a lesson for us, the elderly ones, or the leaders and people in charge of institutions of government. You can't threaten somebody in this century, and the world has changed, and we have to recognize that threats and intimidation will not work. The world has completely changed, and things are not going to be the same.
I want to thank you very much, Mr. Issa Sanusi, for being with us on the program. Mr. Issa Sanusi, the country director of Amnesty International. Thanks again.